Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, or middle of the night, or whenever it is you're watching this. Anyways, today we're going to talk about research methods and tools. We're starting our research project, and before you really start diving into the information, you need to know what you should do with this information. Like, how should you record it? How should you organize it? So today we're going to focus primarily on recording the information. And then later on, there'll be another video on what do you do with it once you have all of it. So to start, note taking. I've got some tips for you. You actually have to read before you write stuff down. I know this sounds so inconvenient, reading something before writing it down, because it's just easier to write it down as you read it, but it's going to save you from having a lot of junk in your notes. You want to make sure your notes are made up of what you actually need. It's substance. It's something that is really going to bulk up your end project. So you don't want to have all this, miscellaneous fluff that you're just never going to use. Then you have to decide what is most needed. Do you need to have all the background information? Do you need tons of dates? Or is that irrelevant to your end result? When you're taking notes, if the author words something in the best possible way, then write it down as a direct quote. But please, please, please remember to put quotation marks around it so that you remember later on when you're writing your paper that this is a direct quote from your research, not a paraphrase. If the author's words are just general, then summarize it, but keep the main ideas, because you are going to have to summarize information. Your paper can't just be quote after quote after quote after quote. You're going to have to put a lot of things into your own words, but you want to make sure that the main idea is maintained. And so that's why in your notes you have to have the main idea, because this is going to be a semester-long project. Don't think that what you are researching today you're going to remember word for word 2 months from now. And most importantly, always record where you got the information. I can't tell you how many times I've had students come to me and say, I have this great information, I don't remember where I got it from. They can't use it now because they can't properly cite it. And if they can't properly cite it, their paper's plagiarized. And the last thing you want to end up with is having to go back and re-research. Now that is a waste of time. So you look at all these books and things and it just gets overwhelming. It's like, oh my gosh, what do I do with all of this? So there's various ways to take notes. Don't be overwhelmed by the immense amount of information on the internet and the thickness of a book. There's various ways, as I said. You can highlight and annotate notes, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Note cards, general note taking, Cornell notes, and visual notes. So let's talk about each of these individually. So first is highlighting and annotating. I know you hear the word annotating and all of you start groaning because you hate it, but this is for those people who don't like having to write out everything they read. So you're going to first start by printing out articles or getting photocopies of the books that you're getting research out of. You could also annotate on a tablet. Okay, so obviously the printouts are going to be so you can write directly on the article. You can highlight the information that's important. Do Post-it notes all over it as well. Post-it notes are another great way of taking notes. But of course you want to make sure you get the super sticky ones so that they don't start falling off and disappearing everywhere. And you want to make sure you come up with some sort of system. So maybe you come up with a number system, a letter system, or a color system. So if I'm researching Shakespeare and I'm getting information about his early plays and then also information about how the beliefs of the Elizabethans affected his play and came out in the play, I might decide that everything about the early plays is going to be highlighted in pink. And then everything about the Elizabethan time period is going to be highlighted in yellow. Or maybe I'm going to decide that I'm going to put A on everything from one source and B on everything from another source. Whatever works for you. Most importantly, you don't want your highlighted notes to look like this. What's the purpose? Now you have to reread everything. Instead, you want to make sure that you are circling and underlining and highlighting the key information, and then in the margins, make comments of what is this information. So you don't have to reread all of it. So you'll notice that on this example, they have the 4 keys to remembering, and they've circled them. Well, now they don't have to read this again. Instead, they can just read 4 keys to remembering and know, okay, this is where that information is. The second type of taking notes is note cards. And with note cards, you have to have 2 types of note cards: source cards and then the actual information cards. This is a sample source card. This is so that you only have to write down this bibliographical information 1 time. So you're going to write down the author, the title of the article, the title of the magazine or journal you got it from, the web address, the dates, all that information that you need in order to cite properly. Additionally, you're going to give it a number. So you'll see here that I've called this source 1. Every single note card that I write that has information from Welcome to Block Scheduling will have a 1 in the corner. That way I know that that information came from this source, and I don't have to write the author's name out 1,000 times. I don't have to write out the title of the article because that's inconvenient. It's fast. I want to be efficient. So the source card is going to have the author, the title, title of the database, date last updated, date accessed, and the web address. The note cards, each one is going to contain the following: at least 1 piece of information, and I suggest only putting 1 piece of information on each note card. Then the page number, if it's from a book or a journal. And then lastly, the source card organizational code. So remember, this is a number or a letter. So this is what a basic note card looks like. You'll see I have that organizational source code right here, the piece of information. This is a direct quote from a book. So Winthrop Harbor High School experienced an increase of students on the A and B honor roll as a result of block scheduling. You'll notice that part of this is the author's words, part of it's my words, so I put the author's words in quotation marks. While this says it's a direct quote from a book, it's actually not. It's a quote from a journal that I got on the internet, so I don't have a page number to put on here. Here's another basic note card. It's just a random fact, that I got from the information. Number of students in class went down because of block. Notice I'm using abbreviations in these notes, but they're ones that I understand. And this is a general statement. I don't have to have tons and tons of information on each note card. The second type of third type of note taking is going to be your basic note taking. This is writing down the information that you think is important in a notebook. You will want to make sure that there are headings so that you know where information is. And again, you have to make sure you come up with an organizational system of how do I know what information came from what source. So this can be a color coding system, a number system, a letter system. If you want to come up with a sticker system, I don't care what you come up with, but you have to make sure that you are keeping track of what information came from what source. Cornell notes. Many of you have done this in history class. Cornell notes are a way of organizing your written notes in a more kind of here's the heading, here's the notes type of fashion. So basically it makes it so it's quicker to say, okay, I want the information on the age of the Great Pyramid. All right, boom, find age, I have the information. This is actually very kind of anemic in terms of what the Cornell notes may look like. Over time, this is going to be a lot bulkier. So you may have, construction and then half a page or a full page of notes on that. But then you can do subheadings under construction as well. Visual notes and webbing. Yes, you can web for your notes when researching. Again, You can either organize it by sources, you can organize it by topic. So notice we've got note taking and then the different types of note taking and then the information on all this stuff and why we would do it and whatnot. This is really good for those visual people, the more creative people who just, it makes them happier, it makes them more willing to go back to it, whatever. Also, it really helps with color coding and whatnot. The last type I have for you is visual note taking, and this is for my artistic types. Literally, you're doing a combination of words and pictures. But again, you have to make sure that you are citing your information. Where is it coming from? So maybe you do one of these for each source rather than by topic, or you're going to have to come up with that number or letter system. A color coding system probably wouldn't work in this situation simply because you've got so much going on the page. Anyways, I hope that all of this information has helped and that you've found something in here that you might be able to use. The most important tips are be organized and cite your sources. Cite your sources. Did I mention to cite your sources?